strained. When a character in this unit advances, climbs, dashes, jumps, or when this unit makes an action, makes an attack, or uses an active or reactive ability, after the effect is resolved, this unit suffers 3 damage. Seems pretty straightforward? Well, let's take a look at that. Hey guys, Rich from Richmond Gaming. Hope everyone is doing fantastically well. Welcome to this, another Star Wars Shatterpoint video. And I've been seeing a lot of questions lately around the condition strained. An effect that seems at first glance something that is very, very simple and straightforward. You do one of the aforementioned effects, and at the end of the effect, you get 3 damage. However, as always with Shatterpoint, everything is not quite as simple and straightforward as it seems. So we're going to do a deep dive into Strained, show you some examples, and then give you some rules to follow so that you can apply this to your own games of Star Wars Shatterpoint. So as we've already mentioned, we've got a list here of all of the things that are going to trigger strain. So it is an advance, a climb, a dash, a jump. So any of the 4 movement actions are going to trigger strain. Now it's important to note that it's not just when they are movement actions. The actual act of making those advances, climbs, etc., whether they're in or outside of an action, is going to trigger strain. When you make any type of action, so this could be your movement action, this could be an attack action, this could be a recover, this could be a, what else have we got there? This could be a take cover. All of these are focus as well. All of these are going to trigger strain as well. And then anytime you make an attack, so again, we know there are lots of out of action attacks, or use an active or reactive ability. So pretty much anytime you do anything in the game that falls under any of those categories, you are going to suffer 3 damage once that effect has resolved. But as we mentioned, it is not as simple, as straightforward as just looking at the after the effect is resolved. So let's go into it and take a look at the timing of Strained and how it changes in different situations. So let's start off. We've got Lady Bo-Katan Kryze, or Lady Kryze, as she is known. And as you can see here, she already has the strained condition. Now, if she was to do anything here, let's say she makes a movement. So she's going to make a movement action. That could be, she could be using a movement action there to make a advance. She could be using her jetpack, whatever it is she's doing. At the end of that, so once she's completed that movement, not necessarily at the end of the action, once she's completed that movement, she's going to take the 3 damage from strain, and then the strain will be removed. We know that's how it works, pretty simple and straightforward. Okay, let's take a look at another basic example. In this one, once again, we've got Lady Bo-Katan Kryze. This time she's going to make an attack into Gar Saxon. It will be an attack action. Once again, once the attack is finished, she's going to take 3 damage. Now, the reason for that is that if you take a look at her combat tree, she doesn't have an option on there that allows her to heal herself and remove that special condition before the attack has finished. If, however, let's say we were somebody like an Obi-Wan Kenobi in his Form 3 Sorosu, and as long as he got 1 success, you can see that first success there is going to not only do 2 damage, but it's going to allow him to heal himself as well. And this heal will take place before the end of whatever it is that you are doing. Therefore, you've got the window of opportunity to remove the strained condition before it kicks in, and you wouldn't take any damage. Now, these ones are very, very simple and straightforward. Now, we can apply the same logic to the recover action. So you would take a recover. During that recover, you would remove the strain, and then when you get to the end of your recover action, the strain is no longer present, and therefore it doesn't kick in and you don't take the 3 damage. Let's move on then to some other situations that are a little bit more complex and sort of give us an idea of the timing of strained and how it works in more complex situations. So we have got here Bo-Katan Kryze once again. We've got Gar Saxon, but we've also then got another Clan Kryze Mandalorian. So Bo-Katan is going to activate, and she's going to start by making a move. So she's going to move up, and she's going to be within range 2 of that allied Clan Kryze Mandalorian, hopefully triggering Mandalorians are stronger together, and Mandalore will survive. And you'll notice that we do have a heal there on Mandalore will survive. However, yes, she is going to take the 3 damage at this point, because even though she has other triggers that are going to happen, she has completed one of the prerequisites for the strain condition. In this case, it was making an advance, even though it was within a move action, and the strained will trigger. Now, other things do get to kick in after this. Obviously, the strained will be removed. Mandalorian Stronger Together will kick in, which will give her a free focus action. And then because of Mandalore will survive, she'll be able to do the things on there and heal herself twice, taking off 2 damage. But she will still trigger that strain, because that strain is kicking in before those heals kick in. Now, you may think, okay, I've got it. It works now in my head. Let's show you some other examples and show you how it can start to get a little bit crazy. So we've got the same exact setup. Bo-Katan is going to go again, but this time, rather than her moving herself to the Mandalorian or the allied Mandalorian, she's going to bring the Mandalorian towards her using that Pride of Mandalore. So the Mandalorian is going to jump and be within range 2. Now, we already know that that is not a movement action, therefore it isn't going to trigger Mandalorians are stronger together. However, what we're going to do now with Bo-Katan is we're going to make a move action. And for our move action, we're going to stay exactly where we are. We're not going to move anywhere. So we're not going to perform a advance or a dash or whatever it may be, a climb even. So we're not actually triggering the event within our own action itself. This means that at the end of the movement action, we can trigger Mandalorians are stronger together. Now you may be thinking, Rich, you just told us in the previous example that strained will kick in after the movement action. Well, because we didn't move and we didn't actually use the movement tool to move anywhere, we've ended our movement within range 2 of another allied Mandalorian character, and now we get to make a focus action. Now, player effects happen before neutral effects, or non-player effects, sorry. And because we opted to not make that move, we haven't yet triggered, or we've not yet had a triggering event for the strain. So we do get to use Mandalorians are stronger together, which is going to allow us to do a focus action. Now, once again, you may be thinking, but Rich, Mandalorians are stronger together is a reactive ability, and we know that a reactive ability is one of the triggering events that will cause strain to go off. But once again, Mandalore will survive is another player effect that has the same timing as the strained effect itself. So we get to trigger Mandalore will survive. Now, if Bo-Katan was to take her dash, because we have to do the dash first and then the 2 heals. If at this moment in time we were to do the dash, we would take the 3 damage and then we'd be able to heal 2 of them. But we're going to opt to not take the dash, and we're going to make 2 heals, meaning that we can remove the strained. Now, that seems a little bit crazy. What was the difference there between the first and the second? Because we still did all of the actions, but it's the things that happen inside the actions that make the difference. So to try and illustrate that, I'm going to show you the breakdown of the 2 examples that we went through. So in example 1, our move action started. So we've started an action. Then within the move action, our advance starts and our advance ends. And if you look, that advance ending happens before the move action ends. And it's really, really important that we differentiate the 2, because if you see there, step number 3 is the first thing that we have done that triggers the strained, so that is where it would trigger on example 1. Let's take a look then at example 2. Let's break down what we did. Let's point out where those triggering effects of strained would be, and we'll explain why that wasn't the case. So we started out then with our tactic ability, and we used that Pride of Mandalore to jump with one of the Clan Kryze Mandalorians. Now, using a tactic ability isn't one of the triggering events that's listed on strained, so using that itself on Bo-Katan isn't going to trigger the strained condition. However, don't take that as gospel, because there could be things within that tactic ability that cause strain to trigger. So for example, in this one, if the Clan Kryze Mandalorian had the strain condition on them themselves, even though it's not going to trigger Bo-Katan's because she's the one that initiated it, making that jump with the Clan Kryze would have triggered strained. We then started our movement action, and then we ended our movement action, and we didn't use a dash, a climb, or an advance as part of that. But when that movement action ends, that would have been the first point in this where the strained condition could have triggered. However, as I mentioned previously, player effects take precedent over non-player effects, and if they've got the same timing, we always resolve player effects first. So because that movement action ended, and because it was at the end of the movement action, if we are within range 2 of another allied Mandalorian character, we get to trigger Mandalorians stronger together. So the opportunity for strain to trigger disappears, but we then get to do Mandalorian stronger together, which, as we know, allows us to do a free focus action. So we make our free focus action, and once again, at the end of this, at the end of that action, Mandalorians stronger together would trigger the strained condition. But Bo-Katan has another player ability, Mandalore Will Survive, which means that once again it gets bumped down the pecking order and strain is unable to trigger. So Mandalore Will Survive. Now at the end of this is where the opportunity for strained would trigger, but as you know, we chose to not use our dash. Therefore, we were able to heal, we were able to remove that special condition strained before everything finished. So when it comes to the end of it, it's no longer there and it can no longer trigger and do the 3 damage to us. So let's take a look at another example then. We've got our 501st Clone Troopers, and as you can see, they have strain. But what we're looking to try and do is get them a hunker token so they can use Bring It On Clankers to remove it for free. So we've got defensive maneuvers. We know that's going to give us a hunker. So it pairs really, really nicely with Bring It On Clankers, meaning that if we can get within range 3 of Captain Rex, we're going to be able to remove that hunker token. So we perform our dash, but then our dash ends. And because it's not an immediate thing that happens, then unfortunately, guys, that is going to trigger the strained, and it is going to do 3 damage. Now, once again, the strained will disappear, and at the end of that, we could recover a damage. So a better way of doing this is the 501st Clone Troopers in the exact same position. They're going to take cover. Now, when they take cover, they get to make a little push towards or in any direction, and at the end of that push, because that push doesn't trigger, a push isn't a triggering effect of strained, they get to go ahead and take their hunker. Once they've got their hunker token, we then get to trigger Bring It On Clankers because they get it, and then they immediately get to make the Bring It On Clankers and heal themselves, so they can remove that strained without actually taking any damage. It feels a little bit strange, it feels a little bit weird, but once you get your head around what triggers and what doesn't, and in what order, it can be pretty simple and straightforward to work out. Now let's talk about non-player effect, the fact that strained is a non-player effect. So let's take a look then at Cad Bane Notorious Hunter. He has the identity of when an allied character wounds an enemy unit, after the effect is resolved, refresh 1 force, and 1 character in this unit may heal. Then if the allied character is a bounty hunter, refresh 2. Well, irrespective of whether or not it was a bounty hunter or anybody else who put that strained condition on your opponent's unit or character, If they wound because of that strained ability, unfortunately, guys, it isn't going to trigger I'll take on any job for the right price, because it is not a player effect. And we've got plenty of other examples in the game, including but not limited to, Count Dooku with his Brave but Foolish. We've got Jango Fett with I'm Just Looking to Get Paid. And we've got Mother Talzin with Wrath of the Great Mother. It is a non-player effect, and it isn't going to trigger any reactive or active abilities, or indeed any identities that rely on an enemy character or an allied character doing something, even if they're the ones that put the strain on in the first place. It's also worth pointing out that you can get rid of strained whilst a character is wounded. So let's say that you have got some B1 battle droids, they've had a strain condition put on them, but they're also wounded, and then you activate Kalani and you get to make a dash with those B1s. Well, you're going to be able to make a dash with them, you complete the dash, and then you remove that strained, but you don't take any more damage because you can't take more damage once you have a wounded token. Now, this may seem like it's a bit nonsensical, but if you've got a character with multiple conditions on them, remember we only get to remove one condition when we actually flip from being wounded to injured. It can be a really, really nice way of making sure you don't have units coming back with multiple conditions on them. So just a little tip there on how to get rid of strain when you're wounded. It can be really, really effective. So guys, here are the rules that we need to follow when we're looking at strained and working out whether or not is going to trigger. So strain triggers once the first condition is met, even if it is inside something else. So as we mentioned, it's not the movement action that triggers strain. It doesn't trigger at the end of the movement action. It triggers at the end of the actual dash or climb or jump or advance that you make. Although you can't make jump with a movement action, but you get where I'm coming from. It is a non-player effect, meaning other player effects with the same timing happen first. So when something says at the end of a movement action, if we do that move inside it, it's going to trigger it. But as we should, if we don't do that move inside it, and we don't actually perform the move itself, or we do something like a focus or anything that can trigger something else, the other thing that you get to do first is going to happen first. And lastly, it can be removed whilst performing an action that would otherwise trigger it, meaning it is not then present at the end of an action. So we showed you that long drawn out one there with Bo-Katan using all of her various triggers. That could be an attack action, as we mentioned, or it could be actually just making the recover action. So then when you finish whatever the triggering event would be, strained is no longer present and you do not take the damage. Guys, if you've got any questions on strained, if you've got examples, I would highly, highly recommend, as a first point of call, head over to the Savage Lands Discord. We've got our rules clarification on there. We actually have a couple of the guys that run the Shatterpoint forums on the Discord as well. If it's something they're not completely sure of, they may point you to go and post it within the actual rules forums itself, and go check them out as well. Go and have a look at the rules forums, because it may be that the example that you're looking for has already been answered, but there's also plenty of other people on there who can try and help you out with your questions. It's something that seems really simple and straightforward at first, but when you dig a little bit deeper, there's layers of complexity. But once you get out the other side, you should be able to apply those rules to any situation in your game and work out whether or not strained should have been triggered. Hope you enjoyed this video, guys. It was a little time in the making. Huge thanks to Thorus, one of the guys from the forums, one of the moderators on the forums, who helped me out with this, because there was times where I was sort of getting very confused as to what happens when. So yeah, big shout out to Thorus for helping me with that one. I also want to give a big shout out to Loyalist Games, the sponsor of the channel. Huge shout out to them, and also a big shout out to our Patreons who help us make these videos. And you can support us on Patreon for as little as £1 a month. There'll be a link down in the description below. Guys, if you could like this video, share, subscribe, all the usual stuff, it really does help with the growth of the channel. You guys seem to be loving these little hints and tips videos. So hopefully we'll try and put more out there. And if you do have any hints and tips that you want to ask for, or any rules clarifications you want, put them down in the bottom below. And if they get enough votes and things, I'll do a video on them as well. But as always, guys, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, may the force be with you.